Hey everybody, it's Renee. Today we're going to talk about James chapter 1 verse 17. It says, "Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change." James is conveying a very powerful truth about God's character, that He is the source of every good thing in our lives and that He is consistent in His generosity. He writes, "Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change." This means that God's gifts aren't like mood swings. He doesn't give one day and take away the next. He isn't influenced by the weather or our latest mistakes. If He gives it, it's ours to steward. We all possess natural gifts, talents, and abilities. However, how we choose to use them is entirely up to us. Romans 11:29 reinforces this idea. It says, "For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable." This means that God won't take away the gifts He's placed within us. We can choose to use them for good or selfish gain, but we cannot pretend that we don't have them. For instance, an artist can choose to paint for God's glory or use their talent to build their own brand and reputation. A musician may write and perform songs that lead people into worship, or choose to glorify themselves and perform to crowds instead of the audience of one. In the same way, a speaker can use their words to bring life and truth, or to manipulate and deceive. Regardless of our choices, God will not snatch away our gifts. The real question is whether we are using our gifts for eternal purposes or merely for temporary gain. Jesus illustrates this principle in the parable of the talents found in Matthew 25:14-30. In this parable, the master entrusts 3 servants with different amounts of money, referred to as talents, before going on a journey. 1 talent in those days is equivalent to about $15,000 today's money. The first 2 servants invested wisely and doubled what they were given, while the 3rd servant buried his talent in the ground and did nothing with it. When the master returned, he rewarded the first 2 servants, but stripped the 3rd of everything and cast him out into the final judgment. Why? Because God expects us to use what He has given us and not to hide it away. James also warns us against self-deception. The Greek word he used here means to wander off track, to veer from the right path, or to lose one's way. We might find ourselves thinking, "My gifts don't matter that much," or "I'll use them for God eventually." Another excuse that I've often heard is, "Other people are more talented, I'll just let them do it." However, God's nature is to give generously, and He doesn't waste gifts, so neither should we. Every one of us has something to share, no matter how big or small, and God's family is not complete without your piece. James describes God as the Father of lights, and this phrase illustrates brilliance, radiance, and light that dispels darkness. He then presents a striking image, "with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change." That phrase, "shadow due to change," alludes to how shadows move on a sundial. As the sun shifts positions, shadows change throughout the day. What appears as light in one moment can fade in another. Shadows are always in flux, but God remains constant. Unlike the sun, which is constantly moving, God's position is fixed, unshakable, and unchanging. His stance on His gifts doesn't change either. His generosity is not seasonal, and His nature is to give abundantly, consistently, and permanently. James is reminding us in this verse that every good thing we have is from God. He does not change His mind about what He's given us, but He does expect us to use our gifts wisely. Ultimately, our gifts aren't meant for our glory, they're intended for God's kingdom. The real question isn't whether we have gifts, but whether we're using them as God intended. God habitually and perpetually gives, demonstrating His nature as the life-giving Father. So how do you perceive the good gifts in your life as reflections of God's character? Can you identify specific instances where you've seen God's goodness in your circumstances? How are they shaping your faith? Think about this today. See you later.